I know many of you are pet lovers, dog owners. I've owned a dog a time or two in my life. You ever tried to give a dog medicine? You're doing what's best for that dog. You know it, they don't know it. They fight you, they bite your ankle. What do? Do you stop? Do you yell at it? No. You continue going for the greater good of your little furry friend. And that's all I'm trying to do with the G5. I'm Josh Pate. This is Late Kick. We are live high atop a tranquil downtown Nashville, Tennessee tonight. Much more tranquil than the back roads, not much wooded area, but back roads of Oklahoma. I was storm chasing in yesterday. Tough times out there, especially Sulphur, Oklahoma got really nailed. We were like 5 miles north of that storm when it went through. Thinking about you guys in due time. We will try and direct assistance your way. But as for now, we got a college football show to do Sunday night, April 28th, the year of our Lord 2024. Have star rankings been vindicated again? I don't know if you heard, but the NFL draft was over the weekend, and it always sends us a sombering reminder that the crowd who yells star rankings don't matter on signing day are never anywhere to be found when the NFL draft comes around. So I've got something on that. I've got something on this whole G5 foolish nothingness that popped up involving yours truly over the weekend. Classic case of what I said versus what they heard me say. Portal intel, yes. I saw that shark fin with a little Miami logo on it just offshore, and it has bitten a couple of times today. And we got that, and we got several other things. Checked out the Oregon spring game, checked out the Nebraska spring game, got things to say there. People are throwing Bama and overrated around. We got a whole grab bag of college football deliciousness. That plus a very, very big announcement regarding the ongoing gas station wars and the recruitment of Pate State to said gas stations. That will be in tonight's show. We are jam-packed, and they're watching us in Zebulon, North Carolina, Northport, Alabama, Urbana, Illinois, and Idaho Falls, Idaho. No sleep in over 40 hours now. Look at the bloodshot nature of the eyes. If you're listening on podcast, just picture someone who looks like they've been wandering. That's basically what I've been doing. But if you thought we were canceling tonight's show just because I've been chasing tornadoes and haven't gotten more than 45 minutes sleep in 44 hours, you were wrong, because we've got too much to talk about. At Late Kick Josh, by the way. A lot of good storm chasing coverage yesterday. I just don't have time to put it in tonight's show. So let's dive into what we do have time for in tonight's show. Stars matter, and they matter a lot. Specifically, star rankings in recruiting. You know how you've got your buddy, or maybe you're the guy or girl who tries to sound like the most informed person in the room, and you try and overthink the room, and you try and say star rankings don't matter. Some kid commits somewhere, normally to your rival, 5-star linebacker. Oh, star rankings don't matter. Stars do matter. Stars do. I believe it was Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption that said star rankings are a good thing, maybe the best of things. Colin is telling me that was hope. Hope was a good thing, maybe well, you know what? Both apply. I think tonight especially both apply. Star rankings mean a whole heck of a lot. You don't have to overthink the room on this. The reason I speak so informed on this is I used to be that person. I used to think star rankings are just a crapshoot. Look at this 3-star. He's started a decade in the league now. Obviously, star rankings aren't the end-all, be-all. Accurate. That line is still accurate, but they never throw that line at you. If you say star rankings aren't the end-all, be-all, I got no rebuttal. But if you say star rankings mean nothing, I got a whole lot. There's a nice informative slider, for example, on the screen right now, if you're watching on YouTube, that explains at 24/7 Sports, for example, what a star ranking means. Let me dumb it down for you in this way, because I have to dumb it down for my own sake, not yours. What it's always meant to me is it's always this kind of raw, talent-based metric for trying to project how good a guy is going to be, while also categorizing how good he is in the here and now, coming out of high school. So there are things that takes into account. Height, weight, explosiveness, accomplishments and whatnot, where you played, maybe who you've been recruited by. But there are so many intangibles that go into this thing as well that it would be impossible to project. I don't care who you are. I don't care what company you work for. There is a slice of the evaluation pie that you don't even bother biting off of. How could you know how a guy from the neck up mentally is going to acclimate to college life? How do you know what his injury concerns may be as a sophomore or a junior? So my point there is there's a lot that goes into whether you're going to be a first-round draft pick that no evaluator who's putting a star ranking on you can possibly know. However, that's not what we're here to talk about. There is a lot that people who put star rankings on you as a sophomore and junior in high school can know. And they're nailing it. They're nailing it. I've been of the opinion for quite a while that the evaluation and rankings processes in high school recruiting have never been more deadly accurate than they are now. And I believe that. And there are people doing good work at several companies out there that I think back that up. Let me just give you a very, very broad sampling of what the numbers just told us. 22 of 32 first-round draft picks this year were former blue-chip guys. I'm just going by the 24/7 Sports rankings. Pick whichever one you want to. It's going to look pretty much the same. 22 of 32 first-round draft picks this year were blue-chippers. That means former 4-star or 5-star guys. 7 of them were 5 stars, 15 of them were 4 stars, 9 were 3 stars, and 1 was unranked. Our buddy Preston Guy covers LSU. I think he summed it up a great way. He put out the numbers. Basically, here's what it amounted to. If you were a 5-star recruit in the 2020 class, let's say, you were 9 times more likely to go in the first round than a 4-star recruit. If you were a 5-star recruit, you were 85 more times likely to go in the first round than a 3-star recruit. Did anyone say 3 stars can't go in the first round? Of course not. 9 of them just did. But there are infinitely more, hundreds more 3-star rated recruits per cycle than there are 5 stars. We have 32 of them per cycle here. And so when you account for the amount of 5 stars versus 4 stars versus 3 stars, then it starts to really bear out an honest picture. And that picture is, it doesn't seem like it's such the crapshoot that a lot of people make it out to be when you're ranking high school kids. So before I move on, because I've got a lot to say on this, trust me, I did want to acknowledge one thing. There is one thing the draft bore out the other night, over the course of 3 nights really, that I want to take time, I want to change the tone of my voice for a second. Hand over heart, I want to acknowledge not the Big Ten, but the Pac-12, rest her soul. The Pac-12 had the next most draft picks by conference behind the SEC this year at 43. What a way to go out. That's called a blaze of glory. What a way to go out. Oh, man, it's just such a shame that conference couldn't sustain itself. I'm sure it had nothing to do with inept year-over-year leadership. Oh, look at the Pac-12 on life support on the way out the door. What's that? Oh, wait, I'm hearing they have 43 draft picks, second only to the SEC. But yeah, absolutely. Let's let that conference fall into the Pacific Ocean. That's just the way the sport had to go, I guess. 10 of 12 schools with the most draft picks were Big Ten and SEC schools now and moving forward. So if that lets you know about competitive balance or lack thereof in the future of the sport, then yeah, that's probably a go-to stat. Just a couple of more noteworthy tidbits here, because in hand, when I talk about this thing with the NFL draft every year, I always love to go back in my mentions or go and listen to talk radio or any of a number of other shows that guys do out there. You know, SEC bias is an allegation that's thrown around a lot. And SEC bias, at its core, is simply an allegation that someone with a microphone, in this case me, is giving more coverage to the SEC than they deserve. They're giving benefit of the doubt to the SEC that's not earned. They're giving promotion to the SEC that they don't deserve, or attention disproportionate to the rest of the country that should not be divided up that way. And I've always asked people when they say that, not do you feel that way? Obviously you feel that way. I've always asked, do you think that's really true? They'll say yes, and I'll say, who all's in on it? And they'll say, well, the media. And I'll ask, does that include 32 NFL general managers? Because for the 18th year in a row, the SEC also had the most first-round draft picks in the NFL. So it's not definitive proof. Trust me. I got people in my life that are big into conspiracy theories, and every time you think you have them nailed, you find out it's like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. So I'm sure I can present that to someone, and they'd find a way to wiggle around it. But it just is a pretty harsh indictment when you have to face the idea that according to the way you frame this, not only is the media in on the whole SEC bias conspiracy, the NFL is as well. And unlike me, I can make a prediction, and it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. I could come back and talk the next day, and the lights in the studio will be on, and it'll be fine. I may get made fun of, but it'll be fine. If those guys lose, they lose their job. They can't afford to be masquerading under the guise of SEC bias with their draft picks, can they? And maybe they can. I don't know. I'm certainly not trying to present general managers as infallible, because if you listened, SEC bias alert, if you listen to the way those folks anonymously talked about Spencer Rattler over this past weekend, did you guys hear that? The whole, man, we didn't like the way he presented himself as, checks notes, a high school kid in a Netflix show. We just didn't like it. What can I say about this? I've got immense respect for NFL scouts. I talk to them every Saturday on the field before games. I love conversing with those guys. I get some great feedback from those guys. So this is not a shot at them, mainly just the ones I don't know. I think there are some incredibly lazy narratives that just float around out there in the ecosystem, period. But man, some of the laziest come from anonymous draft types in regards to college football players. And it's like so obvious that you haven't paid attention. I'm not telling you Spencer Rattler's a perfect player. I'm not telling you draft him in the first round. But if you had reasons not to draft him in first, second, third, fourth round, please give me something better than the show he was on Netflix in high school. Dude, I thought Spencer Rattler acted like a punk back in the day. That was my perception of him from the outside. And I don't think that anymore. And it's not like I know him on an intimate, like, first-person basis. I've talked to him a couple of times. I've covered him. But I know a ton of people around him. And they all say the same thing. And I've observed him from afar. He doesn't feel the same to me as he did back then. And what a crazy, crazy environment we live in, wherein a 17-year-old kid could, in fact, mature between the ages of 17 and 21 or however old he is now. Anyway, I didn't plan on talking about that tonight, but the NFL draft, either in on the conspiracy or proving the conspiracy's wrong. I'll let you decide. They are watching us all over the place tonight. We appreciate you guys so much. Just make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. I was storm chasing yesterday, and I don't have time to talk about it again tonight, like I said, but you follow on Instagram, @LateKickJosh. There was a lot of good stuff there. It is a passion of mine. I do it a lot in the spring, obviously, and I meet people out on the road who I follow. Like, I follow them for atmospheric science purposes. I love storm chasing. And it is wild when they want to come up to me and say, oh, man, hey, I love your work. Well, first off, it doesn't dawn on me that anyone in that community is paying attention to me for college football. And so I had several conversations at random gas stations yesterday, more on the gas stations later, with storm chasers who I admire, who are sitting there trying to prop up our work. Man, we're just sitting here talking about college football. We're talking about folks putting their life on the line out there and just occasionally letting me ride along in the back seat. Hat tip, Frankie and Zach. So it had a lot of fun yesterday, and it's wild. I'll leave it at that. It's wild. As is the transfer portal. Transition, baby. Transition to the transfer portal. Transfer portal is on fire, especially for a certain university down south right now. So Miami has finally turned up the heat a little bit, as we told you they would. Damian Martinez, that back-to-back all Pac-12 guy, that 2,000-yard rusher over the past 2 seasons combined, he is not at Oregon State anymore, and he's not in the portal anymore. He is committed to Miami. Colin, just dust it off. Remind the folks what we said about this the other day. They're going to make moves at running back in the portal. I told you that it's not a great fear of theirs that they lost a guy or two. They are about to add a guy or two, so not much doubt there. And they've added a guy, and in the last hour, they've added a guy or two. This right here, by the way, at running back for Miami, is what they should have done last cycle, and I think they know it internally. I think they may have looked at that room, and there were some people inside the building that said, we got Fletcher, we got Parrish, we got Chaney. Those guys are good enough. And they were good enough, but they weren't top end. They're not good enough to go win the ACC with. When you've got teams as loaded as Florida State, or you got teams that are built like Clemson. And so I think they were adamant, we're not going to make that mistake twice. Those are good players. We're going to go get really good to great players. Damian Martinez is a really good to great player. Now, you start to combine that with the fact that they landed Deani Hall. That's the corner out of Marshall, and he played under Guidry, who's the DC down there now. He played under him when he was at Marshall. 55 tackles, 10 pass breakups last year. They got him. They got Jalen Alderman. He's the linebacker out of Louisville. Started 13 games last year, 58 tackles last year. And in the last hour, ding, 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 breaking news. Remember Sam Brown, that Houston wide receiver we were talking about? Not in the portal anymore. Lands at Miami. Here's essentially what's happening. What's happening is Mario landed Cam Ward, and they realize they could make a legitimate playoff run with him this year. The rest of the world doesn't think that because you think Miami's incapable of doing anything on the field because all they can do is recruit. And hey, until they do it, fair criticism. You can think whatever you want. What they think is we went and got the best quarterback out of the portal. We may very well have like one of the quarterbacks that's talked about on day one of the draft next year. Are we going to sit around and hope he can carry us? Or are we going to load up a team around him? Answer, we're going to load up a team around him with a good old-fashioned paper pop. So that's what they're doing. It's pretty common sense. They were always going to be ultra-aggressive in this post-spring portal window, and this is it, and may still not be done. We'll see. Dylan Edwards, the running back from Colorado, he's landed. Talked about Kansas State as a possibility with him last time we were on the show together, and yes, he is committed to Kansas State. He played Pop Warner football with Avery Johnson. Like there are pictures. I mean, there's photographic evidence of this floating around. Avery Johnson, of course, is the quarterback at Kansas State. Now, I want you to consider this. This is the thing that pops in my mind. Fit. Like, how good a fit are you? Look at that, man. Colin and Jesse in there. Just spot on. You talk about Pop Warner photos, and 10 seconds later, there they are. We just have Avery Johnson, Dylan Edwards, high school, not high school even, not even middle school, Pop Warner B-roll on the ready. What kind of licensing deal must we have for that? So I want you to think about this. Johnson is incredibly mobile. He is a big-time threat with his legs at quarterback. I think he ran for like 19 touchdowns in his debut against Texas Tech last year. Edwards out of the backfield, really good pass catcher. So the versatility that they have with those two guys on the field at the same time makes you think some special things can happen at Kansas State. And Connor Riley is the new OC there. Look, they got Giddens back too. DJ Giddens is just there. Like as a running back, he had 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. He returns. So they could be very, very explosive and very versatile, very multifaceted, multidimensioned, if you will, in the offensive backfield. DJ Waller is a safety that went from Michigan to Kentucky. Not an apples-to-apples comparison, but felt kind of like Brooks at Texas in that he's a good player. He didn't have a ton of like proof of performance, as we would call it last year. He got on the field some. He was a freshman defensive player of the week, I think, like 5 times for them last year. But this was the year where they really wanted him to scale up. But he went through spring at Michigan and realized he probably didn't have a chokehold on a starting job, and so he goes elsewhere. And that's just a casualty of depth. I think that a lot of people are starting to realize the overall depth that the elite teams in years past have been able to have will be eroded because of the transfer portal. That just makes you more susceptible to injury. It does mean in the aggregate there is a secondary and tertiary level of depth and soil, if you will, that's bolstered in the B and C tier teams that's stripped away on the A tier level. So the A tier guys will still have far more and far higher level top line players than you, but whoever gets hurt in September, there's a little bigger drop-off position room to position room than there used to be. Also, Jay Fair was a wide receiver at Auburn, and he's going to USC. 31 catches for 324 yards last year. USC at wide receiver, outside of Branch, is not overly proven. They've got potential in the room, and that's about it, which is college football, so it's that way a lot. But Jay Fair could be a guy who goes out there and does some big things. They have Cam Coleman down at Auburn. They just got Keandre Lambert-Smith. So it could be a move that was sort of a domino effect and reaction to that, but going to keep an eye on him too. Really interested to see how he does. You know who else we keep an eye on? Teachers. We are a very pro-teachers show here. We are all the product of teachers. In fact, I'm about to flex on you, and I promise it's not written anywhere. I'm about to flex on you how much I appreciate teachers in 2 ways. The first is our partner, Academy Sports and Outdoors, has just flat out stepped up, and they're giving all teachers 10% off from now until May 5th. And by my calculations, it's April 28th, 7:19 in the PM. So you guys got like a week to take advantage of this. Literally, just bring your school ID to Academy Sports and Outdoors and go get whatever you want. I would say it's on me. It's not on me. The 10% discount's on me, And you don't even need to use promo code. Just use your school ID. Equipment like outdoor gear, footwear, apparel of all kinds, and recreational equipment of all kinds. Go get it from them. And if you're a teacher, enjoy the 10% discount. Hey, even if you're not, go there anyway. 10% or not, go there anyway. I said I was going to flex. You want to know how much I love teachers? Colin and Jesse, watch this. Your boy here, his 6th grade schedule at Harris County Carver Middle School was Langer, Johnson, Hogg, Johnson, Langer, Langer, Newman, Chain. Locker combination was 32, 18, 36, by the way. I'm not totally sure what I had for lunch 2 days ago, but I do remember every teacher I had in 6th grade and my locker combination. 4, 16, 8 in 7th grade, 8, 12, 0 in 8th grade. So, yes, we appreciate teachers, and so does Academy. Go get your 10% off. You've deserved it. You've earned it. Go get your 10% off. Let's move along. As fun and as heartwarming as that was, it's time to go cutthroat here. It's time to get real. It's time to get serious. And I'm not throwing down a gauntlet, but a gauntlet's been thrown down, and I'm just responding to it. Why do I even try with G5 fans? I sometimes ask myself. I think that many of you, like I said at the top of the show, are pet owners. You know what it's like when that pet needs his medicine. That pet doesn't know it needs its medicine. It doesn't know that you're trying to do what's best for it, and you try and feed it, and you try and hide it in the food, or maybe it comes in syringe form, and it's jumping, it's trying to run away from you, it's trying to gnaw at your ankle, anything to not do what it doesn't want to do, but it's in its best interest. There are G5 fans out there who would swear to you up and down, left and right, that a G5 playoff would be the worst thing to ever happen to G5 teams. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, take your medicine. This is for your own good. So they're up in arms. Some of them are really mad at me because I had the audacity to suggest that there are gulfs in resource in this sport. And the Alabamas and Georgias and Floridas and Ohio States and USCs and Oregons of the world are operating at a different level than the Coastal Carolinas and UTSAs and South Alabamas. And I said, instead of pretending they're all playing the same sport, 130 plus of them, why would we not have common sense and long ago have created different tiers of playoff? Like that's so common sense to me. You go in the state of Texas, there's 6A ball and 5A ball and 4A ball. How do they decide that? Is it just like a game of bingo? Do you just pull the ping pong ball out any given year and find out where Katy High School is going to play in the state of Texas? No. It's normally determined by resource, or in this case, enrollment size. And it makes total sense. And it doesn't mean a 3A team can't beat a 5A team, but they don't make them compete in the same postseason because it makes no sense. Because one group is at a disproportionate advantage to another group. We figured that out in high school. College, absolutely not. Throw logic in a blender. So here's the problem. The problem is not that the logic is unsound. The problem is the internet has no interest in logic. In the world of the internet, in the world of the socials, people are largely interested in trafficking in sound bites and like screenshots. And so I can go on this show, for example, and I can say something that I think is pretty well thought out, like there are differences in resource pools in this sport. Maybe teams and programs with comparable resource pools should compete in their own postseason instead of us just shoehorning everyone into one playoff that we all know 80% of the sport could never win, ever. I could say that, and randos on the internet could take it and turn it into this. I've always thought it was one of the most mind-numbingly ignorant concepts imaginable to pretend that South Alabama is playing the same sport as the University of Alabama.
Lodge 2089.
But that's what we were forced to swallow as logic. And South Alabama is chasing the same championship, theoretically, that the University of Alabama is.
It's off the upright.
So if you're listening on a podcast, here's essentially what happened. I said they're not playing the same sport because they're working at far different platforms resource-wise. Some rando out there took footage of G5 teams pulling upsets over very mediocre Power 5 teams in random years, and I guess used that as evidence I was wrong. It wasn't the flex they thought it was, I can promise you that. But that's what the internet did to that point. Okay, so here's what I have come to realize. I have come to realize that it is very possible to disagree with something I say. Of course you can do that. What I have found is 90+% of people who publicly disagree with something said on this show didn't watch the show. They were exposed to the show either on a message board post, which probably took something out of context, or a random out-of-context clip on one of the social platforms. They never went and did their own research. That leads to questions like the one Colin just showed. Colin, throw that up again. This is one of the replies that kept getting forwarded to me over the weekend. It said, it's a guy named Josh as well. Do better, Josh. Do better. He said, is Josh Pate the official #1 enemy of the G5? If anyone goes to any of these G5 schools, I can guarantee you, you'll have a good time. It just keeps on going and keeps on going. Are you waiting on me to disagree with this? You know what? I prepared a helpful Post-it. It's on my index finger here. Post-it popped. Josh and people of Josh's ilk, here's what you will never hear me say. The G5 can't beat the P5. They do it all the time. The G5 doesn't deserve a playoff. Yes, they do. I'm actually telling you they deserve their own playoff. The G5 isn't fun to watch. Fool, this is where I get a little heated. I would venture to guess I watch more G5 football than 90% of the folks out there who accuse me of hating the G5. That right there is an opinion that I'm pretty sure is a fact. I love G5 football. I'm advocating for its growth. We have a situation right now where I want what's best for the G5 as a whole. And people are pushing back on that because essentially guys in suits have brainwashed you into doing their PR for them. The commissioners of these conferences, the university presidents of these teams in the G5, they love cashing the check, and they have come to depend on cashing the check that comes from being affiliated and associated with the college football playoff as is currently constructed. And look, they may not be able to be weaned off of it at this point, but you don't get that money. If you're a Troy fan, you don't ever see a dime of that money. And yet somewhere along the way, you let those folks, 38 floors off the ground in Manhattan, convince you to do their bidding for them. Oh, we have to have inclusion. We have to have a shot. You've got access to an 8-lane freeway that goes off a cliff in lieu of having access to a nice 4-lane highway that goes somewhere. I'm the one sitting here saying, don't you want access to the 4-lane, modest, but 4-lane highway that goes somewhere? And you're like, no, 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 give us the freeway. We don't care that it goes off a cliff. We don't care that there's no world where we'd ever win this postseason. We deserve inclusion. Why? Well, because we just do. Why? Well, you just don't understand the G5 culture. If that's how you think, you're right. I don't understand that. I may get it. I could articulate it to you, but I don't understand it. So I am normally very fluffy with these sorts of things, but it's time for someone to deal in some fact. So randos out there, you wanted to make your videos where you cherry-picked exceptions to rules. How about I use your own logic? I don't even think this is how we should go about this, but paper pop it. For your own good, if you do want to use the concept of just how the G5 does against the Power 5, you guys are 93 and 351 against Power 5 teams the past few years, and most of that was non-SEC and Big Ten. When I filter it even further, filter, the G5 is 26 and 180 against SEC and Big Ten teams. And those are the bad ones. Now, you've got to beat 3 or 4 of them to win a national championship. Josh, it's not about winning a championship. It's about access. How stupid is that? How ignorant is that? Again, the only people that benefits, the only people championing access and inclusion to a massive college football playoff you've got no shot of winning benefits is the people with the pockets that the money will go into. It doesn't benefit you. You're advocating, quite literally, to have access to the 8-lane freeway that goes off the cliff, in lieu of having access to the highway that could go somewhere for you. If you do develop players, by the way, in the modern age, if you do a good job of developing players, you get gutted. How many guys that start right now are leaving these Power 5 schools to go to the G5 ranks because it's working in the inverse direction a whole heck of a lot. The guys who can't start at that level are coming to play for you. The G5 had 18 draft picks. Out of 62 teams, the G5 just had 18 draft picks. Michigan and Washington alone had 23. Just the teams that play in the national championship had more draft picks this past draft than the entirety of the G5. You don't have as much money as them. You don't have as large a fan base as most of them. You've got fractionally sized stadiums. You don't have as good a football player on average as they do. That's why I think it's dumb that 130 plus teams are thrown in the same postseason. It makes no sense. You think I'm taking a shot at you. You think I'm saying you're lesser than. You don't matter. You shouldn't be included. I'm telling you it's apples to bowling balls. I'm telling you, I'll say it again. To pretend South Alabama and the University of Alabama play the same sport is mind-boggling. It's dumb. If the alien were to show up, and we use him to consult from time to time, and he showed up, he would say, which translates to, why is South Alabama trying to be included in the college football playoff? Do they know they have no shot of winning that? Yes, they do. They want inclusion anyway. Why? Because it sends a message, or because anything can happen. No, it can't. No, it can't. I'm telling you 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000. You simulate it. G5 teams aren't winning the playoff. So I don't know what kind of moral quest, I don't know what kind of greater good you think this is serving. It's not. It's not. And look, even now, the only reason Dennis Dodd was able to write that article the other day, the only reason why anyone even now is entertaining a G5 only playoff is not for the right reasons. It's not for the logical common sense reasons. It's because the revenue disparity is getting too big. And so they're finally looking around saying, all right, well, if this is not a financial windfall for us, that removes our motivation for trying to be included. Did you notice that, by the way? Everyone out there, legitimate fans of these programs who've been brainwashed and had the wool pulled over your eyes by these folks, once they realized there was no more money in it for them, they were quick to throw their hands up and say, oh, this makes no sense. Screw it. It was never about inclusion. It was never about what they got you to claim it was about. You don't have to be a sheep for these people. If you want to bah to your own drum, not theirs. They're watching us in Auburn, Alabama. They're watching us in Pacific Palisades, California, and Avon, Indiana. It's just so dumb, man. It is so, I don't know. It is April. I guess we don't have anything better to talk about, and I can't wait to see how the internet handles that one. As Jesse said today, if you have enough time and editing software on your hands, you can make anyone sound like anything. All right, I have got a very, very important gas station wars update coming up. But first, I did watch a couple of spring games. I did, yes, and I've got some takeaways. Oregon had their spring game yesterday. When I watch spring games, I always want to see synergy in the passing game. Or just offensively, I want to know, even if it's just one or two plays, what's the thing or what are the things that happen that stick with me in my mind the entire summer? And Dylan Gabriel to Tez Johnson, it'll stick with me. They got Tez Johnson involved really early. Dylan Gabriel is up there now, he's former quarterback at Oklahoma. And so that right there, I think will be obviously a focal point of their passing game this fall. And Gabriel was 14 of 21, 163, 2 touchdowns. So that stuck with me. Their offensive line on the left side especially kind of got worked most of the day, which is spring game rinse and repeat. Like one side is going to take advantage of the other side. And so do you feel good about it as a fan? Do you feel bad about it? I'd feel good about the versatility and depth they have on their defensive front. I don't know that I would be ready to sound the alarm by any stretch for Oregon offensively. I mean, did we have their true starting five out there? I'm not so sure they did. Is the defensive line good? Yes, I'm pretty sure they are. Am I just blindly leaning into benefit of the doubt because it's a spring game? Yes, I am. I saw several of their freshmen. I saw several of their underclassmen, including several freshmen playing yesterday. Solomon Davis had 7 tackles yesterday. I think the Flowers kid, the 4-star safety in the 2024 class, he stood out to me. Dakota Fields was a 4-star DB as well. He stood out to me. They're deep at wide receiver. They're deep at running back. That's not a surprise. What cost Oregon twice last year when it came down to it is they counted on being able to out-physical Washington, and they went 0 for 2 trying to do that. They didn't lack talent last year. They won't lack talent this year. There's an edge you have to have as a program to show up in those kinds of games. There's an edge they'll need to have in Big Ten play several times this season that they had almost enough of, but knew they still needed to sharpen after last year. That's the great unknown. That's not something you would discover in a spring game. And so that's why God made the spring, and that's why God gives us fall camp, and eventually that over-under 10.5 win season will roll around. They are minus 210 to make the playoff. If you want to just go to FanDuel and bet whether Oregon will make the playoff, if you think yes, minus 210. So our friends at FanDuel think Oregon's got a really, really good shot of being in that playoff. You know Ohio State goes up there. Colin, could you do me a favor? Could you put their schedule back up for a second? Think about October 12th. Think about Ohio State going on the road to Eugene, Oregon, and it's a conference game. We call these goosies, these things, these little bumps on my arm right now. I'm not ready to commit to where the tour is going to be that weekend this fall because I'm not even ready to commit what the name of the tour is going to be this fall. But, buddy, you have the number 1 and number 2 odds teams to win the Big Ten championship playing in a prime time, most likely, prime time game there. I could see myself there. It's a soft verbal that I'll be there. Okay. You know, it's a good way to end that, and it's a great way to roll into what I'm about to talk about. This is worth a pop of the knuckle. I'm just going to be real with you guys. I think it's insane that we don't have a gas station as a partner on this show. I don't like going with fancy fashion type advertising partners because I wear a white t-shirt every week. Okay, we probably won't be in business with like Rolls-Royce anytime soon. It's just not how we roll as a people. If you do, hey, more power to you. But we are a much more, I know my collar's white right now, but we are a blue-collar show. I was at Neyland Stadium the other day, and the first person that noticed me when I was walking around was a guy working on the construction crew, because that's our show. We are a show of the construction worker and the truck driver, and guys that, you know, actually, if you look at their fingernails, there could be some dirt under there. There could be people who know what it's like to wipe sweat off their brow every now and then throughout any given week. So with that in mind, I go to Buc-ee's a lot, Love's most recently, Quick Trip. I've been having a little fun with those guys. And it's mainly been on social, but it's bled into the show a time or two. So as you probably know, Quick Trip's been making a big move. And Love's found out about it. And so Love's came after me very heavily last week. I consider myself uncommitted to gas stations right now. I am being recruited. And Love's came after me, and I was in Oklahoma all day yesterday. And so I took my official visit to Love's, and it went really well. So well that Quick Trip had to respond. And for the first time, exclusively on tonight's show, I am ready to share with you Quick Trip's response. Oh, big update. All right, follow me. So, gas station wars continue for Pate State. My recruitment's getting really hot. I went to Love's yesterday, storm chasing. They showed us a good time. Quick Trip has responded. We got seeds. We got all different kinds of trail mix. Really, really good merch. Got some jerky options here. It just goes and 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 goes. That's not the best part. The best part is personalization is key. Voila. Frankly, what this says is going to stay between me and them. You need to respect my decision on that. But what you do need to know, and what is public, is the Pate State crystal ball, as you can see, has now shifted heavily in favor of Quick Trip, 65% lean to just 30% for Loves, and this has changed since yesterday. Buc-ee's holding out at 5%, but where are you at, Buc-ee's? Where are you guys at? More to come. An entire nation on edge awaits a decision. I don't have a timeline. I do ask that you respect my decision when the time comes, but everybody's still in this. And you know what, Casey's? You know, if you guys are out there listening, it's not too late. It's not too late. Okay, I'm very, very open to entertaining offers. But let me just talk straight with you guys for just a second. Somebody in the ad and marketing departments at one of these places is going to be smart enough to enter into an exclusive partnership with us. We're on a temporary set right now because we're building a new studio. When that bad boy debuts in the fall, and someone's signage is on those bright floor-to-ceiling LEDs, and you're front and center on the most consumed college football show in the world of digital media, someone's going to look like a genius. Let that genius be you. Let's continue. The University of Nebraska had their spring game yesterday as year 2 under Matt Rule gets underway. I was storm chasing yesterday in Oklahoma, and yet I had 2 things going off on my phone. I had tornado warnings, and I had text about Dylan Raiola. So I knew something had happened, and it was a touchdown of like a different variety, and they've had multiple kinds of touchdowns in Lincoln over the past 72 hours, by the way. So Dylan Raiola kind of goes off. He's the true freshman there. He was committed to Georgia for a long time. Nebraska got him. It was a huge deal, and then a bunch of people said stars don't matter, and he hasn't played a game yet, so it's not like I can refute that. He's a really good player, though, and he had some big pop plays yesterday. This is the recipe. This is the fuel for a hype train. This is how it works. Take it from me. I know trains. This is how they operate. You've got diesel, and you've got ethanol, and then you've got what he did yesterday. That is the kind of fuel that can make a hype train run away early. So let's be careful. Let's be cautious, okay? Let's make sure not to jump on that thing too early. He was 16 of 22, 239 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their overall quarterback room's improved, though. If you watch this game and then you compare it to what they were last year, even Heinrich Harburg looked good. He's been there for a couple of years, but they were dead last in turnovers committed last year. Their offensive numbers were terrible. They wasted a pretty good defense last year. And Glenn Thomas is there now. He's the quarterback's coach. He worked with Rule at Temple and Baylor, so I'm excited to see what he's already doing and what he can do with Dylan Raiola. But improved quarterback play and improved wide receiver play, the wide receiver room may be the best, may be the deepest on the team. Again, it's spring, so I really want to talk in a way that gives me an exit door if this thing doesn't pan out. But guys yesterday that looked good, the Barney kid, Ja'Cory Barney, is a true freshman from down in Miami. He's a 3-star guy. He looked good. Like, that's a legit deep threat guy. I don't know how good he is at the top of his stem on route running. I don't know how good his hands are. But if he's even moderate to successful in those categories, he's got the speed. He's got the deep threat. They had some good-looking players in that wide receiver room. So, and a couple of their guys that are going to be just rotational mainstays this fall were really limited yesterday. Coleman didn't do a whole lot. Banks was used sparingly. I don't think Coleman played at all. So, offense has the ingredients. Defense will not be in doubt there. Nebraska, I don't know if they're going to make a big jump. I know that they have some of the pieces there that we would hope they would have. Their over-under win total at FanDuel, 7.5 wins this year. Demetrius Bell, this is where it gets bad. Demetrius Bell is a redshirt freshman wide receiver. He went down with a knee injury. Rule called that a significant knee injury. I don't have anything more on that today. Bly Hill is probably a guy who was in line to start at one of their corner spots. He went down, and Rule called that somewhat significant. So fingers crossed on that one. They open against UTEP, then they got Colorado in there week 2. But if they win against Colorado, Northern Iowa week 3, Illinois week 4, at Purdue, Rutgers, at Indiana, there's not a game until October 26th where you would circle it at Ohio State and say, oh, Nebraska's not going to win that one. They got a shot to be one of the surprise hot start teams this year. I say this about like 4 dozen teams, but let's keep an eye on them. I wanted to talk to you about a couple more things here. There was not necessarily a Twitter question about it, but I know a lot of people have been talking about this. So all you guys have thoughts, as I make sure I say hey to you in the live chat. You know what? How rude of me. Let me just put a random emoji in there. It's a blue ghost. I don't know what it means. It's not symbolic, but just wanted to prove to you guys you're watching live. I know all of you have opinions about Michigan last year. And some of you just hate Michigan, and some of you love Michigan. But everyone's got an opinion about Michigan's team last year. I'm not here to relitigate the whole Connor Stallions thing. You think what you think about that. I think that when I watched the NFL draft this past year, or this past weekend, it really put a finer point on what I've been thinking about this past year's Michigan team. So they had 13 drafted, and only one guy went in the first round. So some people took it upon themselves to pretend like that was an indictment against Michigan. And I didn't view it that way. I viewed it as Michigan being what I call the last great college football team. I think if I write a book about the 2023 Michigan team one day, I may call it the last great college football team. It's not the last college football team that will be made of great players. What I mean is, when will a title ever be won in this manner again? The last 2 years, okay, they've had 22 guys drafted. 11 of 22 of them were blue chip guys. Depending on where you look, only one of them was a 5-star, and McCarthy, some places, wasn't even a 5-star in the final rankings updates. So my point is, they didn't do it the Bama way, where you just go load up on 5-star guys, and you look at them and say, yeah, man, if they don't get hurt, they'll end up being drafted pretty high. That's not exactly the way it works, but that's the way that the elite teams do it. Michigan hasn't recruited at a truly elite level. They brought in guys, they developed them. The 2023 Michigan team is the only team to have more than 10 guys drafted, but only one first-round pick in the history of the draft. So there were a bunch of really good players. There are guys that probably are sophomores, juniors, that may end up being first-rounders, but I'm talking about the veteran chunk of the team. That veteran chunk, that veteran crew of this Michigan team, a lot of whom you saw just get drafted, they came in together. They lost early together. They developed together. They stayed together when there were options to go elsewhere, and when Michigan's NIL package was not exactly matching dollar for dollar with some of the big boys. They stayed there anyway, and then they won together. It's just not a story you're going to tell a whole lot in the future of college football. That's not the way it's going to work anymore. So you may hate Michigan. You may have not liked some of the off-the-field headlines that circulated around that team this past year. I can only speak for myself. I'm able to remove it a little bit when I think about this past year's team. And I think about some of the positive aspects, things that I love about college football, things that as we get further removed from a bygone generation, it'll sound more and more like an Andy Griffith episode in your mind. Kids, if you don't know, just look it up and learn to whistle while you're at it. It'll just be the kinds of things you talk about in almost like a fairy tale type manner about what teams once were, how teams were constructed. So I don't know, maybe that's a little romantic of me, but that's how I feel about Michigan. I don't look at this whole did they or did they not break any draft record, how many guys went first round. I don't care because I'm a college football guy. I'm not an NFL guy, so I don't really care about that either way. There was this unmistakable confidence around this Michigan team last year that I really didn't get slapped in the face with until the week of the Rose Bowl. I was at the Michigan-Penn State game, and I was at the Michigan-Ohio State game. But I wasn't around Michigan as a team, around their players, talking to their coaches as much as I did at the latter portion of the season until the Rose Bowl week. So the Rose Bowl week, they go out to California. Bama goes out to California. We're out there. And I never will forget how quietly confident that Michigan group was. And the reason I mention it is because, in my experience, most teams, when they face Bama under Saban over the years, recently when teams have faced Kirby Smart in Georgia, they think they have to do something different than what got them there because they think what got them there is not good enough. Michigan was just so quietly adamant that we don't need to change a thing, man. We know exactly who we are. We know exactly how we win. We're not going to change anything. We think we're good enough to beat them. And they were right. What Michigan was good enough to beat them. And 2 years earlier, those same guys are standing down there and they're losing playoff games last year. The year before, they're losing a playoff game. The year before that, they're standing down there getting body bagged in the Orange Bowl by Georgia. That is a really good college football story. Well, it didn't start off with fireworks. It ended with it. There were several duds along the way. And think about how much pressure was riding on this past year. Michigan won the national championship, so that's what you'll remember. What if they didn't? What if they had lost to Ohio State? Or what if they had lost in the semifinal to Alabama? That game went to overtime. What if they lost that game? Instead of Harbaugh goes out a winner, there's the maize and blue confetti, J.J. McCarthy completes his story, that team completes their journey. What if it was they choked in the semifinals for a third straight year? It's like the Atlanta Braves of the 90s. Best regular season team. What did you do when it really counted? At least the Braves won one. They'd say Michigan didn't even win one. So that was a big-time moment for them this past year. That's how I'll remember it. Remember it however you guys want to. But if you're interested in Michigan this upcoming year, we do have odds on them. We have odds on them at FanDuel in terms of how many games they're going to win. We have odds on whether they'll make the playoff, whether they'll miss the playoff. Yes, kids, you can bet both of those. We have odds on whether they'll win the Big Ten championship. We've got odds pretty much on anything that you would like to bet. We've got some Heisman odds coming out, like we'll have games of the year. If you want to, if you get to a place in your mind where you're bored enough on a Monday, you'll be able to go bet Ohio State versus Michigan. I think last time I saw Ohio State was about a 10.5-point favorite this fall. So, hey, they'll tell you it doesn't matter, man. Ohio State's been favored in that game. Doesn't matter. FanDuel's the place to go, though. Educational purposes, FanDuel's the place to go. Entertainment purposes, FanDuel the place to go. So make sure you give them a visit, no matter what your wagering or entertainment needs may be. We've got a classic situation where I've got a sneeze. It's just been sitting here, Colin. I'm not telling you it's imminent. In fact, I think I can suppress it, but there is a sneeze, and this is when we do live shows, this is part of the risk. It's part of the tightrope walk, because when I sneeze, it's violent. So I can't just automatically come back from it. I got watery eyes. I got a raspy throat. So it's in everyone's best interest that I get through this final part of the show here, and then we can just go do whatever we want to. I can sleep until about 3 o'clock tomorrow because I haven't had any since 3:30 a.m. on Friday. It's the last time your boy here had any shut-eye. Let's close strong here. I had a question from Andrew. So, Andrew hits me and he says, how long do you think people will continue to overrate Alabama due to the Saban effect, even though he's retired now? Now, Andrew, I trust that you've watched the show or listened to the show for a while. And proactively, I thank you if you have. You know my rule about being overrated. Anytime you call someone overrated, I don't disagree immediately, but I do ask, what are they rated and where should they be rated? And if you're telling me they should be rated lower, who should be rated ahead of them? Now, you presented a hypothetical, so we don't know where Bama is going to be rated any given week in the future because the games haven't been played yet. I can tell you I don't have a lot of concern about this. I think the general public or the AP poll or the JP poll or the College Football Playoff Committee, I think they'll handle this pretty much right. I think the opposite has a better percentage chance of happening. The opposite being the first time they show a weakness, the first time they show a vulnerability, under Saban it would have just been, oh, well, no one's perfect. They lost a game. They'll still make the playoff. Well, now that Saban's gone and everyone's looking for cracks in the foundation, every single flaw, I think, will be turned up to the nth degree. And I think any loss, I mean, can you imagine if they lose 31-21 to Georgia in week 4? And they do play this year, by the way, week 4. Dude, do you know what the talk will be? The talk will be, now that Saban's gone, Bama's run is over, Kirby and Georgia have permanently ascended to the head throne, the head seat at the table in the SEC. You know that will happen. And it's in Tuscaloosa, too. So you know that'll happen. I think that the SEC, I remember, so the past few months, I think gave us proof of this. Proof that people are going to freak out anytime Bama shows the least bit of vulnerability was found in January. Remember January, Kalen DeBoer takes the job, and what happened? That 30-day portal window opened up. Caleb Downs jumps in it. A couple other guys did. One of them has since come back. And everyone started taking it upon themselves, who hadn't been able to trash talk Bama for like a decade and a half, to say, oh, it's here now. Here comes that Berlin Wall crashing to the ground. Well, since then, they stabilized things. They righted the ship. But I think that was an early preview of, even though Bama was only suffering something that would happen to anyone in their circumstance, you saw how people responded. A lot about what Saban did is still there, by the way. So if you want to call it the Saban effect, well, a lot of the players he recruited are still there. Certainly the program he built is still there. That place is immaculate. It's incredible. Kalen DeBoer is a stud in his own right, I think. But it would also be short-sighted to suggest nothing that was great about Saban is still there. The man himself's not the head coach, but it's not like he took his ball and went home. It's not like he said, y'all go find a new building to train in. Y'all go find a new athletics department budget. I'm taking all this stuff. Hey, 20,000 students who enrolled here over the span of 15 years because I'm here. Go back to New Jersey. Start over from scratch, Alabama. A lot of that's still there. So yeah, maybe there is a Saban effect. Maybe there's a Kalen DeBoer effect. Now, if you believe that they won't drop off much, their over-under win total is 9.5. To win the SEC championship, they're plus 950. It's really, really good money to be made there if you believe in Alabama. So I just believe we had a good show tonight. It could have been a disaster because I am very, very sleep deprived. So we're going to get off air tonight and we're going to go get ourselves a nice 14 or 15 hours of rest and be up at the crack of noon tomorrow to meet the day head on. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the podcast feed. If you think you are, make sure you are. Just do me a favor and make sure you check. And if you are, great. That just means you need to steal 5 of your friends' phones and make sure they're subscribed. It's for their own good. This is a victimless crime. It's fine. You're fine. We're fine. We're all fine. So for Director Colin, producer Jesse Bradley, the associate, I'm Josh Pate. Take care. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.